Hello, everybody. Welcome to the online version of our Self-Care for Student Leaders workshop. This is sponsored by the Leadership Center. Before we get started with our material, we'll just introduce ourselves for you. So my name is Cameron. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am a student leadership consultant in the Leadership Center.
My name is Haley Corley. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am the graduate assistant for leadership development here in the Leadership Center.
Okay, so before we get started with the content of this workshop, we're just going to go over what the purpose of this is. Um, Self-care is really, really important, especially for student leaders, but it's something that is often forgotten about or pushed to the side. So we want to remember that it is really important to dedicate time to yourself, to make sure that you're unwinding and relaxing. Like I said, leaders sometimes forget this. We're always caught up with things that other people are doing as well as our own responsibilities. Um, and so in this workshop, we're going to discuss what stress is, how we're going to manage it, and then we're also going to provide lots of resources for you guys to hopefully take with you and use in your daily lives. This is pretty much the breakdown of how we're going to do this workshop. So first, we're going to talk about stress and what self-care means. We're also going to give you guys some strategies, resources, and then at the end, we're just going to talk a little bit about ways that we like to de-stress, and we'll give you guys resources to use to, like relax and start the de-stress process.
So we are going to kick it off by talking about stress and self-care. And when we were in person doing this workshop, we posed the question, is stress always bad? We got pretty much an overwhelming majority of our participants saying that stress can also be good in small doses. A lot of them shared feedback of, stress can be motivating. It can be one of those factors that pushes you to reach goals, to reach deadlines. But overall, the resounding response was that to our individuals participating, that stress isn't always bad. And that leads us into this definition of stress. So, stress is physical and emotional in its response, but the situation can also be positive. So, something like a job promotion or a class that maybe you're really interested in, but maybe has some like hard coursework, those can be situations that are positive. Like you know that the long term effects are going to be good, but in the moment they can cause stressors on your life. It can also be negative. So think about like a traffic jam making you late or a bad test score. Those are some types of negative stress that, maybe bring down our day or cause us more emotional distress. But the overwhelming piece of information here is that your body actually doesn't know the difference. So when we talk about good stress and bad stress, your body is going to react similarly. It knows something's happening and you should get ready to respond. And that's why when we're talking about our workshop today, leaders who are in a good place still need self-care. Whether you're going through a situation that's very stressful for negative reasons, or you love your leadership role and you love everything that you're doing in your responsibilities, you still need to take time for self-care because your body doesn't know the difference and you could still have some of those negative effects of stress. So, what is self-care? For today, we are going to use the definition that is posted on the screen. So, activities and practices that can help you reduce stress and enhance overall well being, essentially proactively taking care of yourself. So, that's a really big piece here is that we hope that your self care is proactive. We hope that you leave today's workshop with an idea of how to de stress in the future and that you proactively do this so that you don't end up at a burnout phase, that you don't end up at a situation where you have to take a break or really have to take time off from your leadership role or switch your focus just because you're so stressed out. So again, self-care is essential. And I know that this word self-care gets overutilized a lot, but we're trying to break the stigma around self-care and really hope that you take this workshop and use it to be successful inside and outside of both the classroom and your leadership roles. So now we are going to watch a short video that talks about self-care.
So I wanted to start off by telling a story about why I'm standing in front of you talking about self-care. Last year was my junior year here at Denison University, and I got off to a really promising start. Wonderful classes, wonderful co-curricular opportunities, as Denison offers always. About halfway through my first semester, however, I started to struggle. I was really struggling to get out of bed. When I was out of bed, I was exhausted, I was fatigued, and I was distancing myself from things that I truly cared about. When I was hit with fatigue and exhaustion, I thought that it was something with my body, because that's the way we're taught to think about health, right? That it's our bodies. After a few blood tests, I realized that that wasn't it, that it was a problem with my holistic well-being. I struggle just to say that it was something with my mind, because I think that that silences the connection that our minds and our bodies have. We're taught to think of them as separate. To me, it was holistic well-being that was off. So I decided to make some changes in my life, and I really worked to make sure that I was taking care of myself. It was revolutionary. The ways in which I took care of myself that I hadn't been doing before were the ways that I came into healing, and I got back to 100%. It was an incredible process, one that I wish I could give as a gift to everyone in this room. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why these things matter so much to me and why they're revolutionary. I wanted to start off with a quote. It's by Audre Lorde, and it says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." This quote means a lot to me for a lot of reasons, but the first is that it tells us that taking care of yourself is not indulgence, it's a necessity, and even further, it's an act of political warfare. I define self-care as a sustained and intentional practice in one's life to preserve wellness and maintain a wholeness in being. For me, this means your holistic well-being is intact. But sometimes I struggle to explain this, so I thought I'd show you a picture. If you've ever been on a plane, this is in your seat back pocket. And it's a woman using her oxygen mask before she helps the child next to her. When I was younger, I saw this picture and I said, why isn't she helping the child first? He's in need, right? As I got older, I realized that the oxygen mask is a lot like self-care. We all have parents, friends, family members that we want to be empathetic towards. But if we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't put on the oxygen mask first, we don't have the capacity to help those people that we care so much about. To me, this is a revolutionary idea. It tells us that it's not selfish, it's necessary to take care of yourself. So why am I making the jump to say that it's revolutionary? Because a revolution is an active and fundamental shift in power. I believe self-care is a shift in power from institutions, from other people, to the individual. When I talk about institutions, these aren't on the whole negative, right? You think about your professors, families, friends, other people in your life, but these people are often influencing our perceptions of ourselves more than we are. Achievement-based schooling gives us the thought process that we need to do well with numbers in order to do well as humans. Self-care takes that power away from those institutions and gives it to the individual, which is why I think it's revolutionary. So I want to talk about some of the practices that I've implemented.
So I'm going to stop it there. She goes on to talk about some ways that you can overthrow some of the self-care misconceptions in relation to school. So in relation to just the academic context. But we are going to go on and do some video highlights before we talk about our self-care strategies that we're going to implement in our leadership roles. So the first thing that I wanted to point out is that in the video, she talks about self-care being necessary and not indulgent. So that's one thing that can be a misconception of self-care. Like, oh, if you take self-care or if you take time for self-care, that's a luxury and I don't have that luxury. That can be a misconception that some individuals perpetrate, like in their student organizations or in groups of individuals, maybe in friend groups. But it's really important to overthrow that misconception because self-care is a necessary to feel good and to continue on in your roles. And if you don't take care of yourself, then that leads to further problems down the road. So it's not indulgent. It's not something that should be a luxury. It's something that should be ingrained in our day-to-day activities or our weekly schedules. The plane reference really stood out to me as well. So thinking about putting on your oxygen mask before putting on someone else's. While this analogy may seem very simple, we really do need the capacity to help others before we can, or we need to help ourselves before we have the capacity to help others. So if you're not feeling good about yourself, about your situations that you're in, it's really hard to be empathetic and to help others through their problems as well. The next point was those people or institutions influencing our opinions of self care. That goes back to the first one of sometimes we can misconceive how self care is impacting our day to day activities. So, this really takes that power away from those institutions or those concepts of self care being indulgent and really allowing individuals to practice self care and have that personal opinion of self care that doesn't stem from other people. Being in a community which we feel whole and safe, that's also something that's super important to self-care. um, for you to feel whole and safe, it will do wonders for your mental well-being, for your physical well-being. If you feel whole and safe, you will have an easier time to implement those self-care strategies that we'll talk about later, because you know that the people who are around you will accept you. You know that the people around you are there to have your back and help you through those tough situations. And then lastly, sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in our to-do list, but in the video, she talks about intentionally doing something not on your to-do list. And I think that that's something as student leaders, as individuals and college level classes, it can be really hard to not just check boxes. It can be hard to put something on our to-do list that isn't necessary, but it's for us as individuals. So we really empower you to think about something that's not on your to-do list and try to do that today, even if it's 5 minutes for yourself. And that will lead us into our strategies. Hold on. There we go. So our strategies, we're going to give you two tangible strategies for self-care, and I call them self-care action planning. So as I mentioned before, self-care should be proactive. It should be something that's on the forefront of your mind before you run into stress. It should be so ingrained in your day-to-day life or your weekly schedule that when stress does occur, you had those outlets already existing in your life. So two strategies today to hopefully help you start thinking about self care in a way that can be easily implemented into your lives. So, we did start off this activity by asking our participants in our face to face workshop what their go to self care activity is. And I can summarize their answers. A lot of them are your typical take a walk or read a book, clean, watch a movie, listen to some music, maybe play with your pets. I know cooking was one, dancing. There's all kinds of things that you can do. But the point about self care from this activity is that it's completely individualized. What works for one person, what works for Cam here today, isn't going to work for me as an individual. And I recognize that. But it's great to hear what other people are doing because it may spark some ideas for what could work for you in the future. So I really empower you today, if you're watching along with us, to ask maybe a friend or two, what do you do for self care? And I think that even just having those open and honest conversations can really open the doorway to learning about self care activities. And that leads us to our first strategy. So, my first strategy for action planning for self care is emotion based. And this is where we really implore or empower you to think about self care and what each feeling that you go through that may be associated with stress, what makes you feel good in those types of situations. So, for example, I did write out a few of mine. So, when I'm overwhelmed, I like to take a walk. So, if I have a lot going on, it can be really hard to step away. But even just taking a 5 minute walk outside can help me clear my mind. If I know that if I'm overwhelmed with sadness, types of sad emotions, I will call a specific friend. So I have a specific friend that I call every time that I feel upset, like majorly upset, not about just little things, but when I really need somebody to talk to, I have a specific friend. And it might be a few friends that you call, or it might be a few people in your support system that you go to in certain emotions. But starting to outline how you feel and what will help you feel better in those specific situations, you could have this sitting around and it'll start to ingrain it in your brain of like, okay, I know I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. My strategy for that is to take a walk. So then you would get up, you would go and hopefully start to de-stress in those situations. So this is the first strategy, completely emotion based. And it just allows you to start to think about those different feelings and how you can work through them. The second strategy is an area based action plan. So, this is where leaders or individuals who are experiencing stress could divide stress into different areas of your life, and then take time from there to identify self care strategies to relieve stress within that area. So, I put down a few of my areas that I may experience stress in as an example. So, I've identified school, work, financial, emotional, leadership stress, relationship based stress. So, whether with a significant other, partners, friends, family, those relationships can sometimes cause stress. So, what I would do from there is start to identify ways, okay, in first area, number one, school, what makes me feel better when I'm stressed about homework or when I'm stressed about coursework, and start to identify things for each area that we could do to tangibly start to feel better or start to eliminate or decrease some of that stress. Now, while these two action plans really speak to ways that you can target different stressors or different like emotions that you feel due to stressors, I know Cam today is going to talk about some overall resources for mental well-being and even some just general strategies that you can pick up and do at any time. It doesn't have to be in a response to a specific situation.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about campus resources, and these are very specific to Kent State. Though, if you are watching from another university or another location, then I'm sure there are very similar resources also available to you. So, our first resource is pretty primary. I would say this is probably one of the first things that people think of when they're feeling stressed or anxious or they're having any other mental health issues, and that is Kent Psychological Services. So, this is a service with licensed clinicians who offer all kinds of different things from individual, group, couples therapy to alcohol and drug abuse treatment. They have a wide range of services and opportunities for you, for friends, whoever. Um, they do psychological testing. They also do consultation services and crisis intervention. Um, and also, if you just want to have a general idea of where you are mentally and how you are feeling, you can do an anonymous online screening. That can just give you a better idea of your thought process. So we have their URL at the bottom as well as their phone number and the address. They are located in, I believe, Van Campen Hall on Kent State campus. Next, we have the Care Center, which is located right across the hall from the Leadership Center. So if you are ever in the Student Center and you visit us, you can also visit the Care Center. What's really interesting about this service is that it was created for students out of a student-led initiative. So they truly, truly understand the needs and requirements of what Kent State students need and college students need. Um, so you can refer yourself or others to be connected to these resources. And not only do they supply students with mental well-being services, they also have three other major areas of priority, including food insecurity, homelessness, and financial insecurity. And these priorities are directed at Kent State students who are at a slight disadvantage or are struggling in one of these four areas and are looking for some assistance. So again, we have their email address if you want to contact them, their location, as well as their phone number. We also have Kent Hall Psychology Clinic, which surprisingly is different from Kent Psychological. So this is actually the Department of Psychology where the psychology majors are located. So these services are provided all by masters and doctoral students in the psychology department here at Kent State. So since these students are not licensed clinicians, um, these services are all free of cost, but they are also supervised by licensed clinicians who work for the university. Um, this service is specific to individual therapy as well. I believe they also do some kind of group counseling. But if you are struggling with depression, anxiety, if you're having relationship issues, or if you're having trouble managing time or stress, this is definitely the place to go. We have their email address, their phone number, their location. Um, I do want to stress that this service is free of cost, meaning that the psychological services we mentioned earlier is your typical insurance or copay run licensing. So, last but certainly not least, we want to touch on the Kent State of Wellbeing, which is less therapy based and more meditation and mindfulness based. So, this is the service that offers meditation free and online across campus. I'm sure you've seen their graphics all over campus if you've been here. Um, but they offer online sessions that range from 30 minutes to an hour. Kent State of Wellbeing also works with the Koru Mindfulness, which is another free meditation program. They offer all kinds of other services, retreats, and 75-minute classes. Some of their other resources that they have are centered toward physical and sexual health as well. So they offer lots of different things. Bro. Okay, this is a struggle. Almost done. Okay, so last on our agenda for this workshop is a activity that either you can do at home or you can just think about. But in our in-person workshop, we did a little bit of light yoga and meditation. On the next couple of slides, I just offer some information about breathing exercises, which is a really, really great way to ground yourself and de-stress either after a long day, before you're going to bed, or right in the morning after you wake up and you're getting ready to start your day. There are lots of different ways to focus your breathing, which really helps to focus your mind and hone in on the present and what is in front of you so you can be productive and have a really effective day ahead. So we also have some meditation playlists that I find very, very helpful. If you're someone like me who struggles with meditation in complete silence, then having some kind of background noise to focus on is really, really helpful. So I know Spotify and Apple Music all have pre-made playlists that you can listen to, whether you want to listen to frequencies or sounds of nature or music. They have all kinds of different things for whatever you're interested in. You can throw these on whenever you are meditating, or if you just want a little bit of light background music to focus on, these playlists are fantastic for that. And then on this slide, I just wanted to introduce the concept of yoga before we did our light exercise. And I really want to stress that it's not just a workout, or it is not just an exercise. Yoga is a mindset, a lifestyle, it's mindfulness. It's also a time to self-reflect and look inward. It is very, not only is it a whole body experience, but it is also a mind experience. Yoga is a great way. It is one of my favorite ways to decompress and focus on something else for a little while. You know, as a student leader, I have a lot going on top of all of my coursework for my classes. So at the end of the day or on the weekends, sometimes I just need to take a deep breath and focus on something else. And yoga is a really great way to do that. I highly recommend using this practice. If you want to look up videos, I believe we're going to link some in the chat for you guys to access. But yeah, so that's just a little bit of information about meditation and breathing and yoga for you guys.
Okay, and I can jump in and just wrap up by going over some of our upcoming programs. So the first one is Kent Talks. So if you go to Kent State and you haven't been to a Kent Talks, I really encourage you to attend one. Sometimes when we talk about topics that could be deemed controversial, we don't get very far. We don't understand how to have dialogue across differences. And something that our Kent Talks program strives to do is teach us how to engage in civil discourse and allow everyone to bring their experiences to the table so that we can learn and grow from others' experiences. So, the first one that we're doing this semester is called the A Word, and it's about abortion. We do really encourage that we're not here to bring together differing political beliefs. We are here to allow everyone to come and talk about their experiences of how they got to their beliefs so that we can learn how to talk with each other in a civilly discourse way. So our first one is actually October 19th. So there was a date change and it's at 6 p.m. in the Leadership Center. So if you're watching this before then, we hope that you'll join us. And our next program is called the Leadership Challenge. So this is a really fun one. It's going to be on October 28th at 5 p.m. with LGBTQ Plus Center. And the Leadership Challenge is basically a minute to win it style game. It really allows teams to come together and practice collaboration, communication, and really have fun in a environment where they can test out their leadership skills. So if you don't have a team, you can feel free to come alone and we will put you on a team. So we do have people who come as individuals and you are competing for a prize. So we're competing for gift cards, which is really fun. We also have a bi-weekly newsletter. So this is our newsletter that goes out every other week and it does inform you on events, not only in our department, but across campus. So we always try to link some upcoming events and initiatives that are going on to hopefully engage you all or provide you with resources. And then lastly, we do want to hear from you. So if you're watching this, please scan the QR code and give us some feedback. We do go through our feedback and we really utilize it to improve our future workshops. And then I just want to say thank you on behalf of Cam and I. We're so thankful for you watching this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We are located in the Kent State Student Center, room 220. It's called the Leadership Center. It's a big open room. You're free to come and study or hang out at any time that space is open to students, unless we have a class in there or workshop. But our email is on the screen, so is our phone number and our Instagram and Twitter handle, which we do post all of our upcoming events too. So we hope that if you're watching us today, that we will see you in person in the future or again digitally. Thanks.